Hello everyone, it's April Garwood from Banana Moon Studio. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to crochet my fall gingham dishcloth. In addition to a dishcloth pattern, have matching patterns for a hot pad, a kitchen towel, and a placemat. All of them use the same technique, so they're just different sizes. So this video will be helpful with any of those patterns that you're trying to work on. To make this, I am using a size J or 6mm crochet hook, and I'm using worsted weight non-mercerized cotton. So I am using Knit Picks or We Crochet Dishy. Having the two solids and then the skein that is a mixture of those two colors is very helpful because these squares are made with this yarn. So if you are not able to find a yarn that is a mixture of the other two colors that you're using, you could potentially do these squares as like a color work square where every other stitch changes color, something along those lines. But it's really going to be easiest if you're able to find one that is a mixture of the other two colors. These two colors are available from Knit Picks and We Crochet as smaller skeins like this, but if you're going to be making a lot of pieces, you can save a little money by purchasing the cones. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to begin with this off-white. It looks pretty white looking at it, but it's just slightly off-white. I think they call the color swan. It's not a bright white. All right, to begin with, we're going to make our slip knot, and then we are going to chain 8. And then I will skip the first chain and single crochet into the bottom ridge loop of all of the other chains across. So at the end of the first row, I will have 7 single crochet stitches. Okay, so I have 7 single crochet stitches. I'm going to turn and chain 1 and single crochet in each stitch across. Now I am going to continue working in rows of single crochet until I have completed 8 rows of single crochet. And this first part here is making this first square. So this first part is just very simple, rows of single crochet. So when I have finished those 8 rows, I'll come back to this video and show you what to do next. I've just about finished the 8 rows to make this white square. Now with 1 stitch left undone, I'm going to go into the stitch and pull up a loop and pause there for a minute. So in this dishcloth, it's made in columns or strips, we could say. So we're going to start here and we're going to go straight up this column. And then we're going to start here and go up this column and so forth. So the next square we're making is this multicolored one. To change colors, I'm going to kind of set that white aside for a minute and take my multicolored yarn and place a loop around my hook with an end that is 4 to 6 inches long. So I'm leaving enough to weave in. And I'm going to pull that through that last white stitch. And you can see how the entire stitch still looks white, but now I have a loop of the multicolored ready to begin the multicolored square. Now, at this point, I want to talk to you a little bit about how we're going to manage our yarn, because ideally we don't want to have to cut our yarn at the end of every square. We will have to cut our yarn at the end of each column, but what I want to do is carry this white yarn up along the side of this multicolored square, and then when I'm making this square, I want to carry this multicolored yarn up along the side of that. I'm ready to make my chain 1 and turn. As we're working on this, carrying the yarn up the side, it's going to be a little better if you chain 1 before you turn, but generally that doesn't matter. It will here. So what I want to do here then is lay the white over the multicolor so that when I chain 1, the white is captured inside of that. And then I'm going to turn and single crochet in each stitch across to begin that multicolored square. And at the end of that row, I'll turn and chain 1 and single crochet across. Now, every time I come back to this side where the color changes are happening is where I want to capture the white yarn inside of my chain again. So I'm going to lay it over the multicolored yarn. So it's just kind of tucked in there. And then do my chain 1. And you can see how here that kind of carried it up the side. And then I'll go ahead and single crochet across. I'm going to continue working like this with the multicolor until I have completed 8 rows of the multicolored yarn to make the square. And just remember that each time you come back to this side where the color changes are happening, you want to catch the color that you're carrying inside of the turning chain. So I'm going to continue, and when I'm just about ready to finish this square, I'll come back and show you what's next. So I've just about finished the multicolored square, and this is going to happen the same way we made the change last time. We'll go in the stitch and pull up a loop, and now since I've been carrying the white, it's right here, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that through. And now I want to carry this multicolored yarn, so I'm going to lay it over the white and do my chain 1 so that I can carry the multicolored yarn. When I turn, you can see these strands of white as they've been carried up the side. So now I'm just going to make another white square. So it will be 8 rows of the white, and remembering each time I come back to the side where the color changes are happening, that I want to catch the color I'm carrying inside the chain 1. And that way I can carry the multicolored yarn up the side of this square and won't need to cut after every square. So when I finish these 8 rows, I will come back and give you just one more detail about making the last square in this column. Nearly finished the next white square. So again, I'll pull up a loop, and I am going to pull through with the multicolored yarn. So it's going to be a little bit different here because you'll see that this is our last white square in this column. So at this point, we can actually cut off the white yarn, and we do not need to carry it up the side of this next square. Just leave your end 4 to 6 inches long, so you'll have plenty to weave in. So for this last square, we do not need to carry the white, so we'll just chain 1 and turn and work 8 rows of the multicolored yarn, and then we'll fasten off the multicolored yarn, and I will show you how to start the next column. I finished 8 rows of the multicolor, so since this is the end of the column, I'm going to cut my yarn here. Now, if you're watching this video for help with one of the larger pieces in this set, like the placemat or the kitchen towel, your columns are going to be longer. So don't cut off your colors after the 3rd and 4th squares. You'll cut them off when you have worked the last square of each color in that column. And now to start the 2nd column, I want to be looking at the right side of the 1st row at the bottom of my 1st column. And then I'm going to kind of turn the piece this way and go through this last of the foundation chains. And then leaving an end that is long enough to weave in, I'm going to place a loop of the multicolor over my hook and pull that through. And then I'm going to make sure I hold this end down while I chain 8. Then I am going to turn this over to work through the bottom ridge loops. I'll skip the first chain and single crochet in the second and in each remaining chain, so that when I have worked all the way across, I will have 7 single crochet stitches. All right. Now later when I weave in my ends, that will be more secure, but for now I want to put it to the back of the piece. And I'm going to go into this first row end right here. Always, when you're working in row ends, always go under at least 2 loops of yarn. That will just help keep your spaces you're working into from getting pulled open really large. So slip stitch in the first row end, and then in the second row end. And then you'll turn the piece and single crochet back across row 1. So normally at the beginning of a row of single crochet, we have a chain 1 as a turning chain. It kind of functions a little bit like a ladder to take us to the top of the row that we're about to create. When you are attaching these columns together as you make them, the slip stitches into the side of the first column are taking the place of the turning chains along that side. Along this side, we will still have a chain 1 turning chain, but on the side where we are joining the 2 columns together, we'll be using slip stitches instead of turning chains. So for row 3, I'm going to single crochet back across, and then I will slip stitch into the next 2 row ends. So it's going to be this 3rd one. So we can see how we have 1 and 2 here. So we'll do 3 and 4 this time. Always the 2 slip stitches, and then turn and single crochet back across. So you'll continue working in this way until you have worked 8 rows of single crochet in the multicolored yarn that you're working with. So this is the end of row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the end of row 7. So I'm going to slip stitch here and then here. Those are the last 2 row ends. And turn and single crochet across. Okay, so at the end of row 8, I need to switch to orange. So again, I'm just going to lay the yarn across my hook and leave an end for weaving in, pull that through, and now we're where we need to carry our colors again. So I'm going to hold on to that end and lay the multicolor over the orange so that I can capture it inside of this chain. And then I'll turn and single crochet across. Now, I want this orange square to line up with this multicolored square. So now I'm going to slip stitch in the first and second row ends of the multicolored square. And turn and single crochet across. And we need to carry our orange. So we'll lay it over, we need to carry the multicolor. So we'll lay it over the orange and chain one and turn and single crochet across and slip stitch up the side of the first column. So I think you can see at this point how this is going to continue. There's not really much left to this technique that I need to show you. I'll slip stitch here and here for the next two row ends. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside and just go over a few things with you looking at the finished dishcloth. So you can see here are my slip stitches going up the side, and it all looks very nice and neat. Remember that as you're carrying colors, once you finish the last square of a color in that column, you can cut your yarn for that. Of course, when you finish these squares, you can cut off the color that was used to make the square because there aren't any more in that column. And you'll just cut your end 4 to 6 inches long and weave it in. You won't actually like fasten it off because the last loops have been pulled through with the next color. When you finish these squares, you'll need to actually fasten off. You will be carrying your colors through the middle 2 squares of each column. Just keep in mind when you're making this dishcloth, you could put an edging all the way around it if you want to. I chose not to, but that means that where I carried colors in these 2 squares, that carrying shows a little bit on this edge. If that carrying of the colors is something that you don't want to be visible on the edge of your dishcloth, then when you make the final column, you're going to want to cut your yarn at the end of each square and weave that end in instead of carrying up the side. I didn't feel like it was all that noticeable or unpleasant looking, so I just went ahead and carried those colors. Of course, you'll want to weave in your ends when you're all done. This is what the back looks like. So it's still fairly nice looking, but the slip stitching up the sides, that join doesn't look quite as nice on the back side as it does on the front. So I think that is everything that you need to know in order to finish this fall gingham dishcloth. And remember, there's also a placemat, a hot pad, and a kitchen towel made using the same technique. You'll be able to find all of those patterns on my website. The links for those, as well as the links for the yarn I used and the crochet hook I used, those are in the description for this video. And I believe that is everything. So I hope that you have a very lovely day. Bye.